All right, welcome in. I'm going to go ahead and get started. And we have a lot of people who have registered for this event, but were not able to make it in person live, which is totally fine. So those of you who are here now, welcome. And those of you who are catching this on another time, welcome as well. This is our Beyond the Asana Mindfulness Workshop series, a way to introduce to you all the 9 practices that help you become more hardwired for happiness and rewiring your brain as it relates to happiness, fulfillment, success, overall satisfaction with life, and how this program adapts to our yoga practice as practitioners, as teachers, on and off the mat, but mostly as a way for you all to start to understand how we can bring our practice off the mat and allow it to enrich our lives more efficiently, productively, and maybe even make the results of your yoga practice more beneficial, more impactful off the mat. So with that, welcome all. And this is a webinar series. We will continue with a different theme each month on the fourth Tuesday of every month. So whether you can make them all or just one or a few, we'll connect the dots as we move along. Let's just take a moment here to get settled with our breath. As always, I like to incorporate a moment of mindfulness and presence. So we'll just take a few moments and you can find a focal point, a drishti, or an internal gaze, closing your eyes. And start to notice how right away, just by going inward, we become a little bit more quiet, we become a little bit more still, and we become more heightened and present with this moment that's calling to us. Just notice your breath. Let's settle here for a few more moments and allow the silence to do the heavy lifting for you. And then start to zip up with your breath. So a little bit more intention on your next inhale, a little bit more effort on your next exhale. And perhaps on your next inhalation, soaking into that full pranic energy and holding on to that inhale, sitting with it, harnessing it. See if you can sip in a little bit more breath and then fully release, even though we don't ever completely exhale. Fully release this breath. And then just allow yourself to come back into this moment. Yoga is action and reflection. So just give yourself a moment here to reflect on that. Well, welcome in again. If you have not yet connected the dots, I'd like to take a moment to introduce to you how this workshop series came to be. And it is on behalf of Happiness Squad. And this is an organization that I have the privilege and esteem of being connected to as the Rewire Yoga Program Manager. Our core values at Happiness Squad are self-mastery, service, mindfulness, gratitude, and compassion. And it is our mission to launch a happiness revolution to hopefully impact 1 billion+ lives in the next 20 years to live with more joy, health, love, and meaning. How we're doing this is through a lot of varieties of outreach into the yoga industry, into corporate wellness, and into life coaching space, holistic well-being, basically a way for us to be able to extend these programs, these theories, these ideas into a community environment where we spend most of our time at work, in the relationship with ourselves, and in our relationship with others. And so we are expanding our possibilities through the Rewire program, and more recently have introduced the Rewire program to the yoga industry, which is an opportunity to really start to pull the benefits of your practice off the mat. So I'd like to quickly just introduce Ashish Katari. He is the creator of Happiness Squad and my co-host for our Rewire yoga journey. And he has an extensive background as it relates to business development and coaching. And what led him to create the Happiness Squad was a personal calling to really be a part of something more. And he spent a significant amount of time researching this whole idea about fear and happiness, why we are struggling so much in the human condition as stress increases, anxiety increases, and a sense of longing for something more starts to increase. He spent a lot of time doing the research and developed a book called Hardwired for Happiness. And from there, the program started to develop. And here we are today with the Rewire Yoga program. And I want to just take a moment to introduce myself as the Rewire Yoga program manager and a yoga teacher, mentor, as well as an Ayurvedic lifestyle coach. It is my pleasure to be able to have the challenge of bringing this beautiful program, this experience, this journey, which has transformed my own life personally in my own practice and as a teacher, and be able to bring it into the yoga industry, into the yoga community, and help enhance the practice of our students, but also enhance the capability for our teachers. Because I do believe, as Judith Lassiter, my mentor, says, yoga teachers are of great service to the world. So I am here to be a mentor for you through this webinar series as well, whether you are teaching, practicing, thinking about being a teacher one day, and looking at opportunities to impact your students in a more meaningful way on a deeper level by helping them become a little bit more well-rounded with their yoga practice, not just on the mat, but also off the mat. So our journey through the webinar series and through the Rewire Yoga program relates to these 9 principles outlined in the sunflower model. This is where our journey will begin today with self-awareness and will continue as we move along month by month. The 9 secular practices are found in every wisdom tradition, are backed by scientific research, and especially as it relates to neuroscience and psychology. When you look at the sunflower, you may notice right away, this is not brand new information. It is probably not even groundbreaking. You might even consider it old hat or old news. But what is interesting here is that all of these ideas, these theories, these teachings, the wisdom that exists in these practices, we are drowning in that information right now, but starving for the habit formation, starving for the actual practice. And so we get this opportunity to reflect on why self-awareness really is important, what self-awareness really is, and how am I in the knowing or the doing of self-awareness. Because through the sunflower model, through these 9 practices, we go from the knowing, the knowledge, to the doing, the being, right? So knowing, doing, becoming, the being, holistically well balanced on and off the mat in your relationship with yourself, others, in your career, in the things that matter most to you. So our focus really in taking the Rewire program and bringing it into the yoga community is to help enhance the benefit of your practice and your teaching. If you're going to show up and do the practice, why not make it more meaningful and impactful? So this is a part of our pursuit to achieve a state of being known as happiness. We are going to dive a little bit more into self-awareness in a moment, but I wanted to help you all know about additional tools and resources available to you. So recently, Ashish and I did a podcast together about bringing your yoga practice off the mat through the Rewire Yoga program. And that is available wherever you would find your favorite podcasts, Spotify, iTunes. It's also available on the Happiness Squad website under our podcast page. If you go to happiness-squad.com. In addition, I'm also pleased to offer weekly classes that are live stream on Instagram currently. I am also looking at on Zoom format soon. And recordings are available on my YouTube page at Alicia Ray Yoga. Every Wednesday at noon Mountain Time, I will take you through a 20 to 30-minute yoga practice rooted in the 9 principles of the sunflower model. So if you're able to tune in, please join. And if you can't tune in live, you can find the recorded classes available at your time, at your leisure, on my Instagram at Alicia Ray Parks. Finally, if you're a book reader, you can find The Hardwired for Happiness at your local bookstore. You can also purchase it on Amazon or go to happiness.squad.com and pick up a copy yourself. If you are really deeply interested in the Rewire Yoga journey as a certified teacher or signing up for one of our upcoming cohorts, we would be happy to connect you with a copy of the book or at least a free digital download of chapter 1. So please email me directly at Alicia, ALICIA, at happiness.squad.com. And if you got an invite to this workshop, this webinar series, then you probably have my email, either my personal or my professional. Either one would work. Alicia Ray Yoga is my other email. I'd be happy to get a book to you and help you start this journey. So let's dive into how we connect the sunflower model to the yoga practice. Often we are asking ourselves when we come to the mat, what is yoga? Every time we come to our mats, we are never the same person. So it's important that we are constantly reevaluating with the action and reflection of our yoga practice to understand that the question that we're truly asking ourselves is, who am I? What do I want? And what is my purpose? And yoga very often has a lot of these answers within. And as we find ourselves in child's pose on the mat and we look inward, we may begin to realize that those answers don't exist out here. Happiness doesn't exist out here. It's an inner game. It begins within. And if you have done a lot of deep dive into your yoga studies, you may or may not be familiar with the 8 limbs of yoga. And again, as you look at the sunflower model, you may be connecting those dots, the yamas and the niyamas, relating to the 9 practices. Again, this is not brand new information, but what we've been able to do here at Happiness Squad is take this idea of overwhelm and information and tools and resources and create a habit-forming practice in a very simplified manner, digestible, easy to access in your yoga practice, outside of your yoga practice, to be able to actually shift your brain from being hardwired for fear to become more hardwired for happiness. So again, elevating and amplifying your yoga practice by being able to bring in these scientific principles and modalities into your breath work, into your meditation, into your asana practice. So I'd like you, user, participant, the person here joining me in your own time and space with breath in your body, to consider for a moment, what does happiness mean to you? If someone was to ask you, as I am right now, how would you define happiness? Just take a moment to reflect. Sometimes we need to give ourselves a little bit of silence and a little bit of space to let those true answers from your divine seat of your soul, deep down within, to be heard and seen and fully realized. So maybe you notice the first answer that comes up, but just digest it for a moment, sit with it, and think about what happiness means to you. And more importantly, why does it matter to you? And as you consider that, these are the key areas that we have found in the practice of the 9 principles are great ways to sort of attune or measure variables of happiness. How we relate to success, our health and wellness, our ability to manage our stress or be resilient, our satisfaction in our life. This could be relationships, self, career. And then your creativity process. There's a sense of energy around being able to have cognitive process and be open-minded and creative in the space of you. So in each of these areas, just take a moment to identify where you might be landing on that spectrum of, let's say, 1 being the lowest and 3 being the highest and 2 being right in the middle. If we look at health together today, where would you rate yourself in your health and wellness? Are you a 1.5? Are you a 3? And then thinking about why that matters, why that number matters to you today. So I want to give you a few moments here in your own space, in your own time. Go through each of these 5 principles and just give yourself a rating, 1 to 3. And you could even be a 0.8 or a 2.3. Thinking about where you are currently landing right now in these areas and why that might be or why it matters. So I'm going to come off screen for just a moment and give you some time to explore this. And of course, as you may be watching this on your own time, you can always press pause if you need a little bit more time. Those of you live, if you feel like you need a little bit more time to come back to this, please do. And continue to let your attention go where it serves you most with your intention for today. I'm going to move into the 5 myths of happiness. As we're leading up to this idea of self-awareness, I want to allow us to go back for just a moment to understand where we're coming from here. So sometimes in order to move forward, we need to, look back for a second. So the 5 myths of happiness, reading on the screen here, I'll be happy when, the definition of success, fulfillment, our relationship to finances and money as it relates to happiness, and then pursuits, goals, ambitions, dreams. Just take a moment to sort of notice, where have you lived in some of these myths in the past? Are you living in some of them now? And as you reflect, this is not about being critical of yourself or judgmental of yourself, right? Just like in our yoga practice, we're always trying to come in with that observer, the open mind, the witness, and being graceful in holding space for ourselves with love and kindness. So looking at this, it's not about coming down on yourself for being in these spaces of limiting beliefs, but just learning from them and then identifying where you are now. Because once you create awareness around that and you start to really identify what happiness really means to you, that path of healing of where you need to move starts to become revealed. So out of all of these, maybe there is one that you could really focus on shifting today. One area where you feel like you're a little stuck, you're holding yourself back, or you're getting into your own way because you did buy into that belief, whether it was taught to you, expected of you, or something that maybe you are battling with internally with yourself. I know for me, the I'll be happy when was a part of my narrative for a very long time. Once I get there, then I'll be able to breathe and I'll finally feel happiness and joy. And I feel like for most of my life, I have been on a quest of happiness. In fact, one of my first passwords, when you first started having to create passwords for, all of your accounts and programs and things like that, one of my first passwords I ever created, it might have been for my first email address, was be happy, because I just knew that that was something that I was striving for, instead of realizing years later, it's been a journey, that it's not for out there, it's for in here. So that's where I lived for a very, very long time. And then being open and honest, right now I'm in a space where I'm curious about success and starting to redefine that a little bit as it relates to my career, as it relates to, being in my mid 40s and thinking about where I thought I was going to be or should be. So that's where I'm starting to find that little bit of limiting belief battle of happiness and joy and fear. So why is this happening? So this is where I feel like you could give yourself a little bit of cred and back off of yourself a little bit, release a little bit of that criticism or judgment, because we are programmed to believe these myths for a reason, because in a way, fear is a teacher, and it's a necessary form of survival. And it's really deeply rooted in our DNA for thousands of years to be hardwired for fear, because it's all about being able to learn from the environment you're in through your senses. We learn through seeing and touching and smelling, and be able to perceive things that are coming at you, information that's coming at you, learning and growing and building from it. So it's a natural response for us to want to reach for fear to teach us so that we can grow and be better, stronger, survive over the long haul. But what's interesting about the fight, flight, or freeze method, we're living in it longer. We are jumping into it far quicker than we need to. And that same stimulus or response is happening for all levels of stress. Our minds don't necessarily know how to discern if it's somebody cutting us off, if it's, your 4-year-old having a temper tantrum, or if you have to slam on your brakes because you're about to, hit somebody in front of you because something happened. All three of those things are different triggers, but our response is a heightened sense of fear, and they're coming at it with that same response. So isn't it interesting that we're not discerning that we don't need to be at that high level of stress response? So if we can be hardwired for fear, we know that we can become hardwired for happiness. So if we can form bad habits, we can also form good habits. And as we build towards self-awareness, this will be something we'll come back to. How we create habit formation is there's a cue, that's something that we're going to respond to. We need to create a new routine around our response. So changing those old patterns, changing those limiting beliefs, and then rewarding ourselves for when we are shifting that behavior. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. Here is a little bit of an example of how we would break that down in our day-to-day life. You have a new habit or routine, which I'm going to introduce to you through self-awareness today. And this is where you start to build on things that you already do. So for example, you already go to a yoga class. You can easily start to build these habits into the asana practice so that in the long run, when you come off the mat and you head back into the life you left an hour ago, 30 minutes ago, the yoga doesn't end there. It actually picks up and resumes because you start to stack these habits into your day-to-day routines, conversations you're having, the routines of your life, at home and at work, the people that you come into contact with, the things that trigger stress, worry, anxiety, and starting to notice and respond to them in a different way. So we're going to have you take things that you already do and start to build on them. So you're not having to add anything else. Utilize what you already have. The tools and the wisdom is within. So let's just utilize it. Make the behavior tiny. It truly has been proven scientifically that we can shift in 5 minutes or less. We can start to rewire the brain. It doesn't need to be a whole hour-long thing. Meditation in 5 minutes versus 30 minutes. Yes, if you can go longer and stay there in that space longer, there's benefit to it, but you can start to shift the brain within 5 minutes. And in fact, if you're really new to these ideas, we're going to recommend that you try 1 minute. And then you build up to the 5 minutes. This is the reward part. Celebrate. As silly as it may sound, celebrate each time that you start to notice your behavior is shifting in a positive way so that you get that dopamine hit instead of getting a dopamine hit for picking up your phone, instead of getting a dopamine hit from doing Netflix and chill. I'm not saying eliminate that, but we can minimize it. Did you know that the average person is picking up their phone 344 times? 344 times a day. We're getting that dopamine hit every time we pick up the phone, but it's a numbing mechanism. It's not a nurturing mechanism. So it'll be really important for you to celebrate and reward yourself, because then you're going to keep steering yourself back to that space of happiness rather than to fear. And then go for a streak. Consistency is key. Building these habits, you have to be consistent. It's a practice. It's just very much like showing up to our yoga mat every day. We just keep showing up because the reward is there. The benefit is there. The hardest part is the showing up. The reward and the benefit follows immediately after. So tracking your progress can actually be really helpful. We recommend journaling. We recommend that you can take a habit tracker. There's all kinds of apps and devices out there. You can literally just tally the habits that you're building so that you're seeing those results long term. So let's build into our practice of self-awareness. Self-awareness is the ability to step back and observe yourself and the world around you objectively. So just take a moment here and let's practice that. Imagine that you're just going to physically step out of your body here and stand next to you and observe you having this experience right now. Notice through your senses. Take a moment to breathe in, invite any aromas, what you're seeing, what you're hearing. If you're noticing any taste or textures in the back of your tongue or your throat. And then feeling the connection of your body. This is the practice of releasing perceptions, releasing expectations, releasing those limiting beliefs, and replacing it with that sensorial connection, real information that is happening now. You can't breathe the aroma in from the past, right? You can be breathing in the aroma that reminds you of something from the past, but you can't do it back then. You have to do it now. You can't feel the energy that's happening in the future because it doesn't exist yet. You can only feel the energy that is happening now. And then allow yourself to step outside of the observer observing you. So you give yourself even more space and distance between your body, your thoughts, and your emotions, and objectively observe. This is where we shift from the external view to an internal view. And when we go internal, the answers are within. When we go internal, we draw and pull ourselves back in. We become more present. We become more mindful. As you look at the yamas and the niyamas, you're going to see that there is a lot of connection within the yoga practice and self-awareness, especially as it relates to the moral disciplines and observances of a yogi. Through self-awareness, we are able to create non-harming, truthfulness, non-stealing, practice moderation, greedlessness, become pure, content, self-disciplined, know ourselves, and then release to that full surrender. Let me go back to that thought about shifting from external view to internal view. By being self-aware, you shift from this external worldview of what it takes to be successful, happy, fulfilled, creative, resilient, to an internal view of who you are, what your values are, and what matters most. If you are not able to look inward, it is hard to discover your purpose. Feel grateful for how much you already have. Notice what you already have and are abundant with. Be able to discover your fears and overcome them. Similarly, it is critical towards developing kindness and compassion for others, building authentic relationships, and setting intentions. So ask yourself, how can I know what to do? How can I know what the answers are if I don't really know who I am? And this goes back to self-trust, reestablishing your sense of self and trusting yourself. When we look at the history of self-awareness as it relates to spiritual traditions, this is a journey of thousands and thousands of years. From various forms of philosophy and spiritual beliefs, cultivating a sense of self-awareness is connected to yoga, Buddhism, Stoicism, Taoism, Islam, Christianity, and more. This is not a new journey for us as humans. This is a long, long journey. We're still working to evolve ourselves as it relates to self-awareness. It's an ancient, ancient practice, and the tools are there, and the success is there, and it's possible. Again, it's just pulling ourselves inward, creating space between body, thoughts, emotions, and allowing yourself to be the observer. To help us on this journey of self-awareness, it's important to identify that we receive information between assertions, which are facts, and assessments, which are beliefs. So facts are claims about what is observable in the world, whereas assessments are evaluations, judgments, opinions. So I'll give you an example. The meeting was 1 hour. The meeting was scheduled from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. It was 1 hour. That is a fact. A belief might be that meeting took forever. That's a personal opinion. That hour, I'm describing it as lasting forever. So take a moment here in your own space, because beliefs shape who we are, and they come from assertions and assessments. Ask yourself this question: what is success to you? What is wealth to you? What is health to you? In a room full of people, if we were to ask each other these questions, we all know everyone would have a different answer, because it would be based on their beliefs, their assessments. And because we do not all have a unified answer, it cannot be a fact. When we answer questions like this, they are assessments. And these little pieces of assessments, beliefs vary. And so what happens is that we don't often recognize the difference between facts and beliefs. Facts are going to be more universal, but sometimes they lead us down a story that isn't really serving us. Success is having a house and a corporate job, working 9 to 5, 2.5 kids, a dog, a cat. Take a moment and breathe. Possibly for some that believe that, but not for everyone. Success can be something different. How many decisions are you currently making based off of assertions or assessments? Holding on to stories that are assertions when actually they are assessments, this is where we get into trouble. By changing this pattern, this is where you can begin to shift those limiting beliefs and free yourself from something that is no longer serving. Isha Kriya is a practice for self-awareness. So this is where we would introduce a micro practice. In the Rewire program, we are introducing to you these 5-minute micro practices. This one today is about self-awareness that you can practice on and off the mat. This is about creating space between self-thoughts, moods, and sensations. We've already spoken and moved along this journey of self-awareness and talked about it in theory and understanding the importance of it. But unless you're practicing it, once again, you're just drowning in knowledge and wisdom, but not doing anything with it. The learning isn't going to do anything for you. It's the doing to become being. Know, do, be. Isha Kriya is the practice of releasing one identification with the mind and the body. And this allows you to have an increased ability to concentrate. So creating that space, that distance from your thoughts, your emotions, and your bodily sensations. And we practice this through a meditation. We would recommend that you would practice this for 5 minutes. But as I said before, if you're building into this as a new practice, start with 1 minute a day. I would recommend that you would do this in the morning and at least one other time in the day, setting a timer for yourself, scheduling your moment of wellness so that it happens, doesn't get moved around, doesn't get compromised. So do this when it makes sense to you, because again, we want you to stack these things on top of things you're already doing where it makes sense. So is it getting to your yoga practice and doing this on the mat in the studio or at home if you practice from home for the first few minutes before you move into the asana, the physical practice of your yoga. And then at the end of the meditation, take time to reflect. You took the action, now reflect on it. Bring awareness to what you're feeling in your body. I'll walk you through an example here. This is a very common practice for self-awareness, which is that you would sit quietly and say out loud, if it's helpful, or quietly to yourself, I am not my body. I am not my mind. I am not my emotions. If you need to remind yourself that you are the witness or the observer, you can add that fourth sentence on. Another way to look at this is you can say, I am not my body, I am the witness. I am not my mind, I am the observer. I am not my emotions, I am the observer. Witness or observer, whichever one works better for you, whichever feels like it just flows naturally for you. Start with 1 minute, build into 5 minutes a day. Do this for 5 minutes every single day, and you will become more self-aware. You will shift your brain to go from being distracted and disconnected to going to fear and becoming more connected to the path of happiness. So let's break this down just as we did before, understanding habit formation. When we think about our limiting beliefs, going back to our myths of happiness, becoming more self-aware, now we can start to take this a step further and go into those assessments and assertions. So think about a limiting belief. Maybe it relates to one of the myths. Maybe it's something that you have been stuck with for quite some time. You're going to identify what that limiting belief is and name it, because as soon as you identify it and name it, you immediately take some of the power away. Once you've named that limiting belief and you've taken some of that power away, reflect and collect evidence. So here I challenge you to think about the limiting belief that's coming up for you again and again and again. What emotional response you are having to that limiting belief. Are you feeling angry or frustrated? Do you feel scared? Do you feel like you're shutting down? Do you feel passive? Do you feel numbed by it? Really start to identify one key strong emotion that you are feeling, even though you may be feeling more than one. Really connect it to one so that we can simplify this process. And then take a step back, create space, and think, where is that coming from? What's on the other side of that emotion? Is this something from my childhood, my inner child? Is this something from feeling like I'm a victim? Is this the warrior in me that wants to fight, that wants to just show up and defend? Is this the avoider in me that wants to just shut down and withdraw and not have to deal with it? Because once you start to identify, is it your warrior, your avoider, your inner child, or your victim, you might be able to then take another step back, create a little bit more space and distance, and recognize where that limiting belief was born. Whether it was internal or external, someone said it to you, you watched something, you observed something, something happened to you, and you, in a space of survival, reaching for fear to survive, formatted that limiting belief because it protected you. But now it's no longer serving you. So it's time to rename that limiting belief, collect evidence. Another thing you can also do is not just rely on your internal self, but once you have looked at your internal self and gathered as much evidence as possible, then you can go to your support system, your community. Share your underlying belief with friends and family, people you really trust. Maybe it's the person or the persons that will be so honest with you that you almost get upset because they're so honest with you. They're not trying to protect you by telling you what you want to hear. They're telling you what you need to hear, regardless if you agree or disagree. Start to get a little bit more information so that you don't have a narrow mind and you get stuck in something that you can't see. And then once we have this awareness, it's important again to approach it with grace, with love, with kindness, engaging yourself with a mood of curiosity and lightness, noticing what's coming up for you, using your breath, using the meditation. I'm not my body, I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my emotions, especially if you're in the middle of a very eruptive emotional cycle and you feel like it's taking over your ability to think clearly. Stopping to breathe and reminding yourself of those, you are not the anger, you are feeling anger. You are not the sadness, you are feeling sadness. You are not the pain, you are simply feeling the pain. And it's important to feel those emotions because once you feel them and acknowledge them, you get to the other side of them, but not allow yourself to become them, to be identified by them. So shedding that belief allows you then to move on to that space of clarity. And the next time that you have that same stimulus or response, you're learning to repattern your brain. And one day It will just become automatic. You don't even have to think about reaching for those tools. You just do. You just are. You went from knowing to doing to being. So as we wrap up our time in this session about self-awareness, happiness is a state of being, not an emotion. Think back to where you rated yourself on your scale of happiness. And remember that through simple habit formation, we get to create our desired experience. You get to create your desired experience. So when you have a moment where something is happening and you give yourself time to reflect on it, don't run away from it, don't hide from it, don't be shamed by it. Think back and ask yourself, is that the desired experience I would have created? And if the answer is no, what would you have liked to have seen or experienced or have happen instead? And that, again, already starts to reframe our mind and change the lens that we choose to see the world through, that we choose to become aware of. When you create these habits, remember, you're building on something that you're already doing. You're celebrating yourself each time you notice a positive shift so that we keep rewarding that behavior to happen again and again and again. Your practice for your new habit formation on self-awareness is to create space between you, your body, your thoughts, your emotions. Is it just sitting in silence for a few moments, being with your breath? Is it giving yourself undivided attention in your particular asana practice? Or is this perhaps the challenge when you roll up your mat and you go back into the world that you left behind? Allow yourself to still be in that yoga bubble and create space and distance between emotions coming up after your practice, thoughts, feelings, and sensations, and see how long you can create distance and space between them. Rewire your yoga practice by applying the art and science of yoga to your life off the mat. This is just the first step. As you see in the sunflower, self-awareness is right in the middle. It opens the doorway to our remaining practices. There's more to come on this, but today really was about creating that habit formation, the understanding of why do we want to focus on self-awareness as we rewire our brains for happiness, love, joy, abundance, fulfillment, success, creativity, resilience. And then you have this opportunity to work on this for a month before we move into our next session together, Tuesday, March 26th, same time, 2 p.m. Mountain. We will move into living moment by moment on and off the mat through mindful living, really taking self-awareness to the next level and utilizing mindfulness to achieve a higher state of self-awareness. So I'll give you a little teaser. Thinking about something that you do every single day. Brush your teeth, for example. The next time you brush your teeth, turn off the TV, turn off your phone, turn off the music. Be in your body, root into your breath as you're brushing your teeth. Be with it for 1 whole minute. Notice through your senses, taste, sound, touch, smell, hearing the brushing, tasting the brushing, seeing the brushing, smelling the brushing, feeling the sensation in your mouth for 1 whole minute without being distracted, without being pulled out of it. We're going to build up to having that awareness for up to 5 minutes and build in your next habit formation, which will be 5-minute micro practices around mindful living. So from here, what I recommend that you will all take the opportunity to do to really understand living your practice off the mat is incorporating self-awareness for a few minutes a day in the morning and in the evening. We want to start to help you create a routine for happiness. So if you are going to be doing the I am not my body meditation, a few minutes in the morning, 5 minutes would be ideal. 10 minutes, if you can go longer, the longer you sit there, the more you benefit from it. But 5 minutes is enough to shift the brain. 5 minutes in the morning, and then 5 minutes again, a second part of the day. At the end of the day, consider a way that you can create reflection. Journaling is a good practice, spiritual reading, breath work, a few movements, disconnecting from your phone for at least a full hour before you go to bed, go to sleep. But finding a way to close your day is just as important as opening your day. And this is where you start to feel that rewiring happening. So from here, we'll continue this webinar series, but if you are interested in learning more about the Rewire Yoga program, We have cohorts starting every 12 weeks. We also have a certification program for yoga teachers to become certified to teach this and host space or cohorts for students that want to be able to find more balance in their yoga practice off the mat and bring a more holistic well-being approach to the asana practice. In the 8 limbs of yoga, asana is only one of the limbs, the third limb. So these practices really help you to adapt and reach for those seven other limbs in yoga. I look forward to connecting with you all and helping you along the way as yoga students and yoga teachers and seeing how Rewire might fit into your format, into your life. And maybe if it's not on the mat, it's in a space of work or your relationships. We have a life coaching program. We have a program for professionals. We really do believe that Rewire will benefit everybody in some way, in some capacity. And if you want to be a part of our movement to impact the lives of 1 billion people or more, please reach out and let me know what your thoughts are. I will close here. Thank you so much for your time today. And we all begin somewhere. I know there were a handful of people here registered. I hope to see that this grows and continues over time as we build our community here at Rewire and Happiness Squad. Namaste.